Hey guys, this is Tommy from the Ravens Creek Study, and we're continuing through our study on the end times. Today I want to continue with our look at nations, and specifically the inception of nations, looking at the Tower of Babel here. In Genesis 11, this is the first time that we see the word nations appear. Maybe it's even in Genesis 10. I guess I could open up my Bible and look at that. But in Genesis 10 you have the descendants of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. The theological term given to this is the Table of Nations. And from this incident, you find in verses 10 through 12, Genesis 10 through 12, you have Nimrod and some of the things that he has brought. And you find that in his rule, he has the kingdom that's in the plains of Shinar. And this is where the Tower of Babel is actually built. The nations come to the plains of Shinar, and they desire to build a tower that would reach to the heavens. There's a problem, though. There aren't any stones to be able to build this tower. So, through innovation, through technology, through being inventive, they decide they're going to use bricks. So the nations go ahead and they bake bricks. However, their plans are so imminent, they're so important that they refuse to even wait the extra time for the bricks to dry in the sun. Instead, they bake them to make sure that they bake them thoroughly. And I have here, they bake them for expediency. So what I want to try to get at here, there's something happening here that sometimes I've heard people who would read this story and they would see, oh, well, the nations are in disobedience, but they would also think, oh, but this is also a good thing. There are certain subtle hints to say everything about this is wrong. For one, let's see, there it goes, okay. For one, God said to be fruitful and multiply. He said to go and fill the whole earth. Instead, these nations came together to not be scattered, according to verse 4 here. The nations taking brick instead of stone is a subtle hint that this action was in disregard and contrary to what God had said. Why? What altar of God do you know of that was built with brick instead of stone? God always establishes that the things that are built for him shall not be built with stone or with brick. And in fact, when you look at God's prescription for the altar, he even says you're not allowed to chisel on the stones. You're not allowed to shape them in any way. You just pick them up, and whatever the natural shape of the stone is, you use that and figure it out. So we have from the very inception, from the very beginning of the nations, they have their own agenda, and that's their first priority, is fulfilling that own agenda. And I can ask you, which nation has asked God what their purpose is so that they might try to fulfill that purpose? Can you think of any nation or people group in history that has sought the Lord that they might haply be found of him? Now, I can think of one. Uganda, I think it was a few years ago now, probably closer to 2011 or 2013, somewhere in there, most likely. Uganda actually has officially declared that they are now following what the Lord would specifically call them to as a nation. But that's the only example I can think of within the last 1,000 years of history. I don't really know a whole lot of ancient history, but this is the only thing that I can think of within the last 400 or 500 years, if not longer. As long, and so I want to say that for we as believers, we who are Christians who are living in our country, whether America or some Britain, Ireland, Germany, some European country, Canada in North America, or if you're Filipino or Australian or South African, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at. There is a demand, or a premium, maybe I should say, upon we as believers, specifically in regards to our nation. we are held responsible for the condition of our nation, not because our nations are supposed to follow God, and the truth is that they've always followed God. No, they haven't. They've always gone their own way. But the reason that we are held responsible is because we are not supposed to be like them. So let me put it this way. When we continue to go with the flow and seek our own glory and our own purposes, we are doing the very thing that the nations were doing at the very beginning. They sought their own glory by building a tower that would rival the heavens. They sought their own purposes and their own agenda. This is the wisdom of the principalities and powers. It's a self-exaltation. It's a selfish sort of lifestyle. And even if the selfishness is subtle, it's still selfishness. And so when you as a Christian believer live like that, you are not bringing an alternative, and you are not bringing a challenge, neither to your nation and the people of the world, nor to the principalities and powers. You're not showing the alternative. And so because of this, you're giving yourself and you're giving all of the people who are connected with you, whether through your nation, through your city, through your state or region, you're giving them over to the principalities and powers of the air. You're allowing them to live the lie. There's well, I'll leave it at that. So until the nations are willing to cast aside their own ambition and motives to take up love, they will continue to starve for more. This is true for everything. This isn't just true in the nations. This is true for everything. I mean, think about it this way. Think about when you are not fully, deeply in Christ, you probably are not satisfied or content. You're looking for more. You have to go to the youth camp to get that high again. You have to go to the altar and do more and more and more altar calls to try to find that, quote, deeper spirituality. You have to try to find more, whatever more is. And you'll have it in your mind, speaking in tongues or better worship or more of a sense of God's presence when you pray. Or there's always something that you can call more. And I've even heard one guy say to me, I want more. I don't know what that is, but I want it. It's a dangerous place to be. When you're continually looking for more, it's a surefire sign that you have not cast aside your own ambition and motives to take up the cause of Christ and to take up love. You've not firmly planted yourself in Christ. You are still in yourself. You are still looking for your own satisfaction and purpose, which is also another huge deal. I mean, I can say it this way: when your whole life is built around this is my story, and God has come in and God has done this or that, so I guess it's your story, but God's a part of it. That's going to make it so that everything that you do is self-centered. But when you step out from that and say, no, this is God's story and I get to be a part of that, when you start to realize that God has a plan and a purpose for the whole of the universe, for the whole of the creation, and you get to be a part of that, suddenly there's a difference. Suddenly you're able to step out from the selfish ambition and motives in order to take up that which is outside of self, that which often does not preserve self, but puts you in the way of trouble and difficulty and suffering. Satisfaction, we're starving for more, and satisfaction only comes when truth is obtained. Truth cannot be obtained when we're wholly surrendered to mechanisms and tactics of the devil. What are these mechanisms and tactics of the devil? What I'm getting at here is that we have an entire system by which we live our lives. It's a machine. Everything is built up as unwritten premise. Think about your life. You're born. By a certain age, they say that you're supposed to have learned how to tie your shoes, feed yourself, um, clothe yourself. By a certain age, you should be able to walk. You should be able to talk. There, you go to school when you're 5, maybe 6, depending on when your birthday is. Then you, from kindergarten through to when you graduate high school, now you're like 17, 18 years old. And by the time you're this age, you should have figured out what it is that you want to do to go to college. You go to college to get a degree in whatever field. Once you've gotten your degree, you then find a good job. What's a good job? A good job is a high-paying job, one that you can support your family, and you don't need to have all of the um, well, you can support your family and you can have all of the benefits of internet and cable and Netflix and everything else. And by the time that you get to that point of having a family, getting married, having a family, now you teach your kids how to do the exact same thing that you did, so that by the time that they get to this point where they're having kids, hopefully you're able to retire and you're able to enjoy your grandkids. I mean, who says that that's supposed to be life? That's what everybody's taught is life. But who said? Why is that life? Why can't it be that you? Why can't it be that instead of going to college, you invent your own business? Why is it that there has to be getting a job from somebody? Yeah, you need income, but is income require that you need a job? You see what I'm getting at here? There are other ways in which to look at it, to live your life. What about the people who sell their lives to go into the missionary field? Or I can think of like Leonard Ravenhill. In order to graduate from college that he went to, he actually had to take 20 pounds and walk around the whole of England with nothing more than a shopping cart and whatever he could fit in it. And he had to go around to all of the different towns in England on this little tract that he had, and he had to speak to them about the things of Christ. And when he came back to the college, after going all the way around England, that's when he graduated. I mean, these are stories that you just don't hear about. What about like Rob Bell, who I know is on the heretic list, but when you look at the story of Rob Bell and how he built Mars Hill up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, it started as a Bible study. And he decided, this has to go from Bible study to reality. So they went ahead and they found a building that they could lease, and they were going to have their Bible studies there on Sunday mornings, and they didn't advertise anything. Next thing you know, Sunday morning comes when they're now their grand opening, so to speak, and hundreds of people have shown up. And then the next weekend comes, and not only have hundreds shown up, more hundreds have shown up. And eventually it comes to the point where they have thousands of people who are coming, and they can't support all the people. The firemen are coming in, or the fire chiefs are coming in and saying, hey, this is a problem. If there's a fire, not everybody's going to be able to escape. So a guy gives them a mall that they can have for Sunday morning. So they start meeting in a mall, specifically a mall that is no longer in use. It's not like they're just meeting in a building or in a little room in the mall. No. The whole mall. They were given the whole building, and they had to buy it. But I mean, it was offered in a way that they could do it. And then next thing you know, they're 10,000 strong, and it hasn't even been but a couple years. They went from like just a handful of people, maybe a couple handfuls of people in a Bible study, to like 10,000 people in a matter of a couple years. What happened there? You want to say it's a marketing strategy? They never marketed. You listen to the guy and you can hear over and over again, he'll say, I've heard these stories where people are driving down the street and they're wondering why there's so much traffic and congestion. Next thing they know, everybody's turning and they're turning too. And why are they even in this parking lot? What is this? And that's how they ended up growing. this, who's to say? I mean, so even in church growth, the formula that's been given, the model that's been given for how to build a church, even that is not that's not how you should live your life according to formulas and models. Those are machines. Those are the mechanisms and the tactics of the devil. They see a goal, and everything that's in your way, every obstacle is just a number. It's just an obstacle. It's just a thing. Whether that's finances or whether that's people. And we're willing to look at people as only numbers in order to obtain that goal, in order to obtain that end. That is living by the mechanisms and tactics of the devil. And satisfaction does not come when your life is lived in that way. When your life has a purpose and you're driving towards that purpose, but everything else in your life is nothing more than just a fill in the blank in order to a means to that end, well, then it's no wonder you're not satisfied. You're not living in the moment. You're not able to be content with now. And so there's a perpetuation of the lie. There's a perpetuation of and what is the lie? The lie, it's even a propaganda that you have to go through these steps in order to obtain happiness. You have to go through these steps. You have to go through this formula. You have to go through this machine. People will say, well, how can you change the church if you're not inside the church? Be the change you want to see. It's ironic. These people are the ones who are in the church, so how would they know if you can change it if you're not in it? And for two, they're not changing it. So I mean, there's 2 points there. But I just mentioned this as one more thing, because people have all of these things that they say and that they do believe. They're propaganda. Be the change you want to be. Well, I am being the change I want to be. The problem is I'm not being the change you want me to be. You know what I mean? Little rant, but I think you can get the point. It fits. When nations will live in a way that it has that same kind of machine, that everything goes through the political filter, that the way that you make change in the nation is through politics, that's a lie. That's not how you make change. When people think the way that you make change so that the police stop being brutal against African Americans, when people think the way that you do this is through limiting the police or protesting or shooting them, that is not the real issue. There's an issue behind that. The issue behind it is that they've been fed propaganda. Through the media and through politics, they've been fed propaganda, and now they don't know what to do, and they're going berserk because mankind was not made to live in the lie. They were made for truth. And because there's a perpetuation of this propaganda and lie, people are losing their minds, and they're going way outside of what it even means to be human through murder, through idolatry, through vitriolic furor and hatred, through drunkenness and drug abuse. All of these things are only outward manifestations of the inward unreality, because we have fed people lies and we think that we're doing them a service by keeping them uninformed. This is the result. When mankind is forced to live in the lie, they will seek anything to come out from the deadness of that lie. It produces a numbness. Propaganda does not bring forth reality, or propaganda doesn't even bring forth conformity. The very thing that which the government speaks forth, the government speaks forth propaganda is the very thing. The propaganda is the very thing that ruins the nation, and yet the government thinks the propaganda is the very thing that's going to rescue it. It's the lack of feeling, it's that numbness, it's that knowledge that this isn't right, and yet this is what they're telling us. It's that leads mankind to absolute corruption. Anything in order to feel something. A lot of the old-time preachers still speak against tattoos and piercings and coloring your hair and all sorts of other things. Why is it that people want to get into the tattoos and piercings and coloring their hair? What's the root problem? Is it really that they're rebelling? Or is it that something inside of them is able to intuit that there's something here that is not real, it's not right, and so something within them is rising up seeking for an expression beyond just simply what's been given them. They're seeking for the fuller expression, but they don't know where to look, and so they're turning to tattoos where they can have their whole body as a mural to paint on themselves what it is that they feel and what it is that they want to express. It's not so much about rebellion and trying to get back at their parents or something. It's more like they've been fed this, this is how it works, this is the way it is, and yet everything within them is saying that's not the way it works, that's not how it is. It was at Babel that mankind was not content to wait. Bricks are imitations of stones. Stones represent the truth and the reality of God's building. Everything that was made for God, whether an altar or the temple, was either made of stone or a precious stone. Think of the temple. Yeah, there was a lot of cedar wood, and yeah, even the Ark of the Covenant was made out of acacia wood, but it was overlaid in gold. There's no way that you can read any of what was made for God. It's made out of silver, it's made out of gold, there might be wood as kind of the skeleton for it, but over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. There's bronze, there's stone, there's some sort of a gem. Everything gets back to that which is natural. There's nothing that is man-made. Everything is natural. Well, man-crafted is different than man-made. Yeah, people might craft it so that it has a certain shape or a certain form, because the function of a spoon doesn't, I guess a spoon wouldn't have the same function if it was shaped like a knife. You know what I mean? Anyway, the point that I'm getting at here, it was at Babel that mankind was not content to wait. Why is waiting important? Because the authentic thing, the thing that people are seeking, requires waiting. It requires the patient endurance to be able to realize that it's going to take us longer than just 20 minutes. And this applies also to Christianity. Let me hit this real quick. For those of you who want to know the apostolic foundations, for those of you who want to know the deep things of God and the deep truth, and look, it's not something that you can just simply study, and now that you've watched a few videos, now that you've read a few books, you're the deep guy. It takes an apprehension of God Himself, which is cultivated through years of devotion to Him. It takes time, it takes waiting. And if you have not yet come to the place where you've read the Bible 30 times through, then you have not yet come to a place where you sufficiently know what it means to wait. If you've not come to a place where you're able to just sit there, and whether God speaks or not, you're going to sit there, you have not yet come to a place where you know what it is to wait. If you have to fill the silence with your words and with your prayers, I can tell you, most likely you're not praying, at least not to God. Most likely you're just speaking into the air and hoping that something hears you. There's a waiting that brings forth authenticity that people are starving for. This is what it means to build with stones in our generation. It is to take the time and to take the effort to wait on God until God be the one to establish and to reveal. Nothing of the things of God was made of bricks. When wood was used, that's a lot of W's. When wood was used, it typically was overlaid with gold. Bricks are a cheap imitation of what God demands. God demands stones, so we'll make our own stones out of the clay from the ground. To build with stone is costly and time-consuming, and it's back-breaking. And these stones are heavy, and we're not allowed to chisel them. So we need to make sure to not. Not make them smaller so that we can carry them. Brick is cheap and simple. You can make them all the same size and shape to fit together nicely and neatly. It is at Babel that we have the beginning of that numbness, the beginning of that principality and power influence. It's the beginning of the veil that blinds the nations. Whereas the principalities and powers had their usurping and influence before that, even with the city Enoch, before the flood. It's Babel that is the first. It's the beginning. It's the inception of the veil that blinds nations and not just one people. It's no longer just the people of Cain, the descendants of Cain. Now the influence is over all nations. Those powers of darkness have desired to keep their place of authority ever since. This is the unchallenged reality of the nations, and to blow the whistle is to invite reproach. To make the claim that the nations are under the influence of demons, and that what they are promoting is their own agenda and it's not beneficial. That is to invite reproach. And this is why the demonic forces go after those who aren't even Christian, but are also standing against what it is that they are trying to promote. That which is lie, that which is propaganda, if it's being opposed, you can be assured the one who's opposing is being challenged. This is the condition of all nations that continue to go their own way. Just as God confused the language and scattered the people, so too do we find this same result in the empires of history. From Mesopotamia to the Soviet Union, we find this pattern of confusion and dispersion. What happened to Rome? Where is Babylon? Where is Medo-Persia? Where is Greece? Where is the great empire that was Britain? Why is France not such a huge, massive world power anymore? What happened to these places that, when you go back a couple centuries or a couple millennia, they were the pristine? If you want to know what it means to be on top of the world, those were the nations you look at. What happened? Just like God came down and observed this tower that was supposed to reach to heaven, and yet God still has to come down to see it. And he brings confusion and he scatters the people. So too do you find it in history, that God comes down in judgment in a way that causes for these various empires to be destroyed and ultimately for the people to be scattered. God is the one who establishes the borders of the nations. The nations don't have a choice in that. As much as we want to claim there is free will, and by the way, I'm a believer that there is. I'm not a Calvinist. But as much as we want to claim this, we have to also understand God is the one who is sovereign. And his sovereignty is shown all the more because God's sovereignty is shown all the more because he's able to take the free will of men and still be sovereign. modern archaeology has given some insight into where these people have gone, these ancient empires. Ashkenaz is the father of the peoples in Thailand, Bhutan, Nepal, Burma, Tibet, Vietnam, Laos, Malaysia, Indonesia, Mongolia. I'm not gonna read all of this. The people of Assyria came from Ashur and migrated north and east after being conquered. They settled in Germania, which is modern-day Germany, and in India, where they established the caste system. And this is where, if you look at Indian history, you'll find there's a certain people that come from the West, and they were known as the white demons. So we can see where these people have gone after their empires have collapsed, so to speak. After the Tower of Babel, when they're scattered, we can see where these people have gone. Nazi Germany desired to establish the supreme race. That idea actually comes from the Assyrians, who called themselves the Shar Kishadi. I don't know how to say that, to be honest. Which means master race. It is thought by some that this phrase, Shar Kishadi, is where we get words like Tsar, Kaiser, Caesar, Shahs. I think you can see where I'm going with that. The Holocaust was not from a megalomaniac. It was the outworking of a demonic spirit that possesses the Assyrian nation, which went north after it was conquered. And that demonic spirit has imposed a false reality into the people's mindset. It is at enmity, with the Jewish people because they are God's people. So what am I getting at here? How can I sum this up so that we can go into the next segment? It is from these patriarchs that we find our eternal purpose and destiny as nations. The gods of this world have laid claim to the nations, and they do not desire to give up their seats of power. It behooves us as Christians to look into our own histories and understand what it is that governs our localities and nations. But don't rush out with gusto and zeal. What we're dealing with is the prophetic destinies of nations, which is at the heart and nub of the prophetic perception and call. Okay, so what I want to say in order to sum this up with the idea of Babel stemming onto Babylon, we're going to get into that next, how it goes from Babel to Babylon. With Babel, what I want to finish here with, then, there was an inception here at the beginning with Genesis 10 and 11. What God called each one of those patriarchs to is it's going to affect the way that the peoples that come from them are supposed to live. So the nations that have come, Greece being Japheth, what is that? Well, that was a horrible time, since I just forgot what they're even called. Who was that? Javan. Yeah. Genesis 10:4. Javan eventually becomes Greece. What God had called Javan to, the Greeks are supposed to also bring forth. No, but how can you know what that is? It takes an eternal perception. It takes a prophetic perception. It takes more than just being able to look at your history and make a guess. In order for you to actually know that, because we can't ask Javan, we can't ask the Greeks either. They don't know. So who do you ask? You ask God. And if God doesn't say it, then you continue to pray that the Lord would bring them into their prophetic purpose. And maybe one day He will show you. Anyway, it's not exactly where I was thinking I was going to be going. But I think that's okay. We hit on a bunch. I feel like it was kind of scattered. Hopefully you can sift through to understanding what I'm trying to say. Next, we're going to look at the Antichrist kingdom. We're going to look at this whole Babel to Babylon. Therefore, we're going to summarize everything and bring it to a conclusion, I think. That's the next. Yeah. Yeah. So the next video is going to be the last video for this little segment, and then we're going to look at the prophetic purposes of nations. So, thanks for listening. Grace and peace to you in Christ. I pray that the Lord would open your heart and open your understanding and give you the prophetic purpose and prophetic perception that's necessary in order to comprehend what God is doing currently. I pray for this. I pray this for you in Jesus' name.